I never imagined I'd be in this situation. Sharing my life's turmoil on a public forum wasn't something I ever envisioned. Yet here I am, laying bare my soul to you, strangers, hoping for some semblance of clarity and advice. I'm a man in my mid-30s, and my story is one of betrayal, deceit, and a quest for truth. My wife and I had what seemed to be the perfect life. We met in college, fell in love, and got married after a few years of dating. Our life together was like a dream. Stable jobs, a beautiful house in a quiet suburb of California, and friends who envied our seemingly flawless relationship. Little did I know, my world was about to come crashing down. It all started innocuously enough. She began coming home later than usual, citing work meetings and drinks with colleagues. I didn't think much of it at first. She had always been dedicated to her job, and I admired her commitment. But over time, her excuses became more frequent, her demeanor more distant. I chalked it up to stress, trying to be supportive, but a seed of doubt had been planted. One evening, as she showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message popped up from a contact I didn't recognize. It read, "Had a great time tonight." My heart skipped a beat. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was probably just an innocent message from a friend or colleague. But the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. The late nights continued, and her behavior became more secretive. She was more guarded with her phone, stepping out of the room to take calls and responding to messages with an urgency that hadn't been there before. My trust in her, once unwavering, began to waver. I decided to take matters into my own hands. One Friday night, when she said she was going to a friend's house, I installed a small tracking device in her car. It felt like a betrayal of her privacy, but I needed to know the truth. The next few days, I monitored her movements. She went to work, the usual coffee shop, then home. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I began to doubt myself, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Then one night she said she had to stay late at the office. I watched the tracker as she drove, not to her office, but to a hotel downtown. My heart sank. I followed her, parking a block away, watching the entrance. She walked in, dressed impeccably, and disappeared inside. Minutes felt like hours as I waited. When she finally emerged, she wasn't alone. A man followed her out, laughing, his hand resting intimately on her lower back. They shared a brief kiss before parting ways. I snapped a few photos, my hands shaking. When she got home, I confronted her. I showed her the pictures, demanding an explanation. She broke down, confessing to the affair. It had started as a harmless flirtation with a colleague and spiraled out of control. She begged for forgiveness, claiming it was a mistake and that she still loved me. But how could I believe her? The trust that once bound us was shattered. I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I hired a private investigator, someone who could uncover more than I ever could. Weeks passed, and the investigator revealed a web of deceit. She had been seeing this man for months, lying to me at every turn. They exchanged messages, calls, even gifts. The betrayal cut deep. I became obsessed with finding out everything. I started gathering evidence, documenting everything. I needed a clear head, a solid case if I was going to confront her again. I tracked her every move, recorded conversations, built a dossier of her infidelity. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. How could she do this to us, to me? Then the investigator discovered something more. Her lover wasn't just some random guy. He was involved in corporate espionage. My wife was unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, feeding him information from her company, sensitive data that could ruin her career and land her in legal trouble. This wasn't just a case of infidelity anymore. It was something much bigger. Dear viewers, more than 90% watch my content without subscribing. If you still have not subscribed, then I ask you to do so. For me, this is the best motivation to continue. I confronted her again, this time with all the evidence laid out. She was shocked, not just at being caught, but at the implications of her actions. She had no idea, or so she claimed, of her lover's true intentions. She had been used, manipulated. But the damage was done. We agreed to separate while we sorted things out. The house felt empty, lifeless. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the pain. But the nights were the hardest. The silence was deafening, the loneliness unbearable. I started talking to a lawyer, preparing for the inevitable divorce. But part of me still hoped we could salvage something from this wreckage. I sought therapy, trying to understand my own emotions, my own role in this mess. Was there something I did wrong? Could I have prevented this? One night, as I was going through some old photos, I found a note she had written to me years ago. It was simple, heartfelt, a reminder of better times. It brought tears to my eyes. How did we get here? How did we go from that loving couple to this? The divorce process was grueling. We fought over everything, the house, the finances, even the pets. It was a bitter, painful end to what had once been a beautiful relationship. But through it all, I tried to remain calm, focused. I needed to move on, to rebuild my life. During this period, I received a call from the private investigator. He had more information, something crucial. We met at a small diner where he laid out his findings. Her lover was a key player in a corporate spy ring. He had used multiple aliases, infiltrating companies to steal trade secrets. My wife had unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, become a pawn in his game. The realization that her affair had not only destroyed our marriage, but could also have severe legal repercussions for her was staggering. Armed with this new perspective, I knew I had to act. I reached out to her company's legal department, providing them with the evidence I had gathered. It was a difficult decision, one that felt like a final nail in the coffin of our relationship. But I knew it was the right thing to do. Her actions had consequences that went beyond our personal lives, affecting the livelihoods of many. Meanwhile, I continued to see my therapist. Each session was a step towards understanding my emotions and the impact of the betrayal. The therapist encouraged me to confront my feelings head-on, to accept the anger, the hurt, and the sadness. It was a slow, painful process, but it helped me start to heal. I also started writing. Journaling my thoughts and feelings became a cathartic outlet. I documented everything: the early days of our relationship, the happy moments, the gradual decline, and the ultimate betrayal. Putting my emotions into words helped me make sense of the chaos, to find some clarity amidst the turmoil. One day, while going through my journal, I stumbled upon a pattern. The decline in our relationship had coincided with a specific period in her career. It was around the time she had started working closely with a new team, the same team that her lover had infiltrated. It made me wonder if her affair had been purely emotional, or if there had been professional manipulation involved from the start. Armed with this new perspective, I confronted her one last time. I needed answers, closure. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe where we could talk without interruption. I laid out my findings, my suspicions, and asked her to be honest with me. She looked tired, worn down by the weight of her actions. She admitted that the affair had started innocently enough, a flirtation that escalated. But she also confessed that her lover had manipulated her, using her access to sensitive information for his own gain. She claimed she had been unaware of the full extent of his intentions until it was too late. Hearing her confession brought a strange mix of relief and sorrow. It didn't excuse her actions, but it provided some context, some understanding. I could see the remorse in her eyes, the regret. But it didn't change the fact that our marriage was over. Dear viewers, I ask you to subscribe to the channel under this video. I will be very grateful to you. The divorce proceedings were finalized shortly after. We sold the house, split our assets, and went our separate ways. It was a bittersweet end, a conclusion to a chapter that had once held so much promise. I moved into a small apartment, a fresh start in a new neighborhood. It was lonely at first, but slowly I began to rebuild my life. I focused on my career, taking on new projects and challenges. I reconnected with old friends, rediscovering passions and hobbies that I had neglected over the years. I started dating again, cautiously, wary of opening myself up to potential pain. But I knew I couldn't let the past define my future. One night, as I sat in my apartment, I decided to share my story online. Maybe it was a need for validation, or perhaps a desire to help others in similar situations. I wrote about the affair, the espionage, the divorce. I asked for advice, for insights on how to move forward. The responses were overwhelming. People from all walks of life shared their own stories of betrayal and healing. They offered support, empathy, and practical advice. Some suggested focusing on self-improvement. Others recommended joining support groups. Many simply shared words of encouragement, reminding me that I wasn't alone. As I read through the comments, I realized that healing was a journey, one that required time and patience. There would be setbacks and difficult days, but there would also be moments of growth and new beginnings. I had survived the worst, and now it was time to rebuild, to find my way forward. I continued to see my therapist, who helped me navigate my feelings and rebuild my self-esteem. We delved into my past, exploring old wounds and traumas that may have influenced my reactions to the betrayal. It was a painful but necessary process, one that helped me understand myself better and prepare for a healthier future. I also took up new hobbies. I joined a local gym, finding solace in physical activity. I started cooking more, experimenting with new recipes, and rediscovering my love for good food. I even took a few weekend trips, exploring nearby cities and finding joy in small adventures. Each new experience was a step towards reclaiming my life, my happiness. As I grew stronger, I decided to confront the legal aspects of the espionage case. My wife had been cooperating with her company's investigation, providing all the information she had. She faced severe consequences, both legally and professionally, but she seemed determined to make amends. I admired her resolve, even if it was too late for our relationship. One day, I received a call from her. She wanted to meet, to talk. Reluctantly, I agreed. We met at the same cafe where we had our last confrontation. She looked different, tired, remorseful, but also resolute. "I wanted to apologize," she began, her voice trembling. "For everything. For the lies, the betrayal. I know I can't undo the damage, but I want you to know how sorry I am." Her words were sincere, but they didn't change the past. Still, I appreciated her honesty. We talked for a long time, rehashing old wounds, seeking closure. It was a difficult conversation, but it felt necessary, a final step towards moving on. Picking up the pieces of my life after the divorce was a slow and painstaking process. While therapy helped, and I found solace in new hobbies, the scars of betrayal ran deep. Trusting again seemed like an insurmountable challenge. I often wondered if I would ever fully heal, or if the wounds would leave a permanent mark on my soul. One evening, as I was sorting through some old files, I came across a folder containing photos and documents from our life together. The memories flooded back, vacations, birthdays, random moments of happiness captured in time. It was a bittersweet trip down memory lane, but it reminded me of who I was before the betrayal and who I wanted to become again. I decided to focus on self-improvement. I enrolled in a night class at a local college, studying something I had always been passionate about: graphic design. The creative process was therapeutic, allowing me to express my emotions through art. It also connected me with new people, easing the loneliness that had become a constant companion. One of my classmates, a woman slightly older than me, noticed my work one evening and struck up a conversation. She was friendly and genuine, and our chats during breaks became a highlight of my week. Her presence was a reminder that not all connections were tainted by deceit. We became friends, slowly and cautiously, and her support played a crucial role in my healing journey. Meanwhile, the legal case against my ex-wife's lover unfolded. Her cooperation with the investigation had mitigated some of the legal repercussions she faced, but she still dealt with the professional fallout. Her company managed to recover some of the stolen data, but the incident left a scar on their reputation. I followed the case from a distance, feeling a mix of vindication and sorrow for the woman I had once loved. My private investigator, having completed his work, remained a valuable contact. We occasionally met for coffee, and he shared insights into human behavior that fascinated me. His stories of deception and uncovering truths were both cautionary tales and lessons in resilience. He encouraged me to use my experience to help others, suggesting that my story could offer solace to those facing similar betrayals. Inspired by his words, I started a blog. I wrote about my journey, from the initial suspicions to the heartbreaking confrontation and the long road to recovery. I shared tips on coping mechanisms, advice from my therapist, and personal anecdotes that resonated with readers. The blog gained traction, attracting a community of people who had experienced their own forms of betrayal. Their comments and emails provided a sense of solidarity, reminding me that I was not alone in my struggles. One story from a reader stood out to me. A man, also in his 30s, had discovered his wife's affair in a similarly devastating manner. His story mirrored mine in many ways, but his journey took a different turn. Instead of focusing on his pain, he had thrown himself into volunteer work, helping underprivileged children. His selfless acts of kindness had become his healing process, offering him a new perspective on life and relationships. Inspired by his example, I began volunteering at a local community center. I helped with after-school programs, teaching kids basic graphic design and art. Their enthusiasm and innocence were a refreshing change from the adult world of deceit and betrayal. Seeing their faces light up with joy and curiosity rekindled a sense of purpose in me. I realized that giving back could be a powerful antidote to my own pain. During this time, I continued to date casually. I met several women through friends and online dating apps, but I remained cautious, my heart guarded. Trust was a fragile thing, and I found it difficult to fully open up. Some dates went well, others ended awkwardly, but each encounter taught me something new about myself and what I wanted in a relationship. One woman, in particular, stood out. She was kind, patient, and understanding of my past. We bonded over shared interests and spent hours talking about everything from our favorite books to our hopes for the future. Despite my initial reservations, I felt a genuine connection with her. She became a regular part of my life, and our relationship slowly deepened. Yet, even with her, I found myself holding back. The fear of betrayal lingered, a shadow over our budding romance. I confided in my therapist about these fears, and we worked through them together. She helped me understand that while the pain of the past was real, it didn't have to define my future. Trusting again was a choice, a leap of faith that required vulnerability and courage. As the months passed, I continued to build a new life. My blog flourished, my volunteer work brought joy, and my relationship grew stronger. I felt a renewed sense of purpose and optimism. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they had become a part of me, reminders of my resilience and capacity for growth. Then, one day, I received an unexpected message. It was from my ex-wife. She had been following my blog, reading about my journey and the lessons I had learned. She wanted to meet, to talk about the past and the present. I was hesitant, unsure if reopening old wounds was a good idea. But after discussing it with my therapist and my girlfriend, I decided to meet her. We met at a park, a neutral place filled with the bustle of everyday life. She looked different, more subdued, the weight of her actions clearly etched on her face. We walked and talked, and she apologized once again, this time with a depth of sincerity that struck me. She explained how her actions had not only destroyed our marriage, but had also forced her to confront her own flaws and insecurities. She had been in therapy, working through her issues, and had even started volunteering at a women's shelter, trying to find redemption in helping others. Her journey of self-discovery mirrored mine in many ways, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her. Despite everything, she was still the woman I had once loved, and seeing her struggle was painful. We parted ways with a sense of closure. The meeting wasn't about rekindling old flames or reopening wounds, but about acknowledging our past and finding peace in it. I wished her well, genuinely hoping she would find the happiness and fulfillment she sought. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer held the same power over my present. I had faced my demons, found strength in my pain, and built a new life on the ashes of the old. So here I am, at the end of my story, asking for your advice once more. How do you rebuild trust, not just in others, but in yourself? How do you open your heart again after it's been shattered? Your words, your experiences, could help guide me as I navigate this new chapter in my life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being there.